Having a lot of money means you get to have a lot of choices. Having a tight budget means your choices may be a little bit more limited. However, buying a basic car does not mean that you have to sacrifice on a lot of creature comforts. That's exactly what the top spec Chery Tiggo 280 wants to prove. And today, we'll see how it does just that. Let's do this. The Chery Tiggo 2 is the smallest crossover in Chery Philippines lineup, and it starts at 695,000 Philippine pesos for the manual transmission variant. The tester that I have here is the top spec automatic variant, and this retails for 770,000 Philippine pesos. Now I got to drive it for the weekend and put it through its paces just to see if it lives up to its life purpose as a value-packed daily commuter. Now, basic does not mean boring, and in that regard, the Tiggo 2 does not disappoint. It shares the same design features that's found in the larger Tiggo models, particularly the Tiggo 5X and the sprinkling of the front grille of the Tiggo 7. You also get this T-shaped design feature on your hood that reminds me of the 70s era muscle cars. Now, despite being the smallest crossover in Chery's lineup, the Tiggo 2 executes that beefy look quite well. You also get your halogen headlights here in a projector-type housing, and I love how these LED running lights here connect straight as a straight line going to that chromed-out center line here on your front grille and connects to the other side of your headlight. Now that is a sleek and sophisticated look, and it's an attention to detail that I've come to love in the front fascia of the Tiggo 280. Now aside from this fancy looking LED running light here, you also get your LED DRLs on your front bumper, and to round off that sophisticated look, you have this satin finished aluminum front skid plate that adds to that sophisticated yet brawny look. Now, the front fascia of the Tiggo 2 looks very well put together. It looks very handsome, and it's as handsome as any city crossover that's out in the market. Now, the sleek profile of the Tiggo 2 extends all the way here to the side. You get this main character line here on your belt line that makes the Tiggo 2 look longer than it actually is. You also get this nice strip of chrome on your door handles, which adds a touch of class, but it's not really over the top. Now, this top spec Tiggo 280 also comes with functional roof rails, and you also get the side repeaters on your side mirrors and a good amount of plastic cladding. Now, thankfully, the plastic cladding has been kept to a minimum, but I also noticed that here in the front fender, you've got a tiny fake vent on your plastic cladding. It's an attempt to look sporty, but you guys know how I feel about fake vents, and well, at least it's small enough to go unnoticed. Now, this particular demo unit that I have here comes in this striking two-tone paint finish. You've got a blacked out roof and a blacked out A-pillar, and this particular blue and black paint combo, I mean guys, this looks amazing. This is something that you normally see in more expensive crossovers, and I'm happy to see that Chery Philippines gave the Chery Tiggo 2 the same color combination and paint treatment. I mean, it just goes to prove, guys, that you don't really need loud and fancy colors to make your crossover look amazing. By the way, this two-tone color combo is actually new for 2020, so you still have your monotone colors, but you've got this fancier looking two-tone paint combo now. Well, if I were you, I'd go for the two-tone combo anytime. Now guys, when it comes to the wheels and tires combo, the Tiggo 280 has a 16-inch wheel in this rather nice-looking sporty design, and these nice-looking wheels are wrapped in 205/55 R16 LINGLONG tires. Now you can imagine how much I wanted to say those tire names again. Behind these fancy-looking wheels, you got four-wheel disc brakes all around, you got ventilated discs up front, and solid discs at the back, which should help give you better stopping power. Now, when it comes to ground clearance, the Tiggo 2 has a respectable 186 millimeters of ground clearance, which is pretty standard when it comes to these city crossovers. Now, I like the fact that the Chery Tiggo 2 has this nice-looking, beautifully designed, sculpted rear end. It just goes to show that the designers of the Tiggo 2 didn't really scrimp on the time and effort to create this fancy-looking rear end for this crossover. It even goes well with this rear spoiler here, but I find it quite odd that they incorporated these black plastic claddings here at the side of the rear glass, because I've never seen a car that had plastic claddings this high up on the vehicle. Now you also get these nice large LED taillights here, and you also have a couple of functional rear fog lights as well. Now you have your rear camera here, and you've got this nice chrome strip that runs down the center of your liftgate, which adds an overall upscale vibe to the Tiggo 2. Now you also have your parking sensors here as standard, and if you notice the rear bumper, the bumper material is basically black plastic cladding, and although you know guys how I feel about plastic claddings, but in this particular case in the Tiggo 2, it actually looks quite good. It makes the Tiggo 2 look a little bit taller than it actually is. Now when you pop open this liftgate, you'll see it's a manual liftgate. It's not really a big problem, especially at this price point, but then you'll see the advantage of having a nice elongated and sculpted rear end for the Tiggo 2. The trunk capacity of this baby is a cavernous 420 liters, which is even larger than some of the trunk capacities of bigger subcompact crossovers in the market. If you look at the trunk, it's basically just a trunk, but you could also tumble down your back seat if you need more space, so there's that. Now, let's get out of the trunk and go over to the front to see what kind of engine powers the Tiggo 2. The Chery Tiggo 2 is powered by a 1.5-liter naturally aspirated engine that's good for 106 horses and 135 Newton meters of torque. It's also mated to a 4-speed automatic transmission, which is kind of weird and odd because most modern cars nowadays come with more gears than that. Well, if the Suzuki Jimny can get away with it for more money, then I guess the Chery Tiggo 2 will have to get a free pass as well. Now, this is really just a typical city commuter engine, so let's just head inside now, guys, and see what kind of interior goodies the Tiggo 2 can offer us. Now, for a daily commuter, comfort should rank high in your priorities list, and in that regard, the Tiggo 280 delivers. It's got really comfortable seats, nice soft seats in fact, and I love that it has a quirky design cue to it. You see, these seats are fabric seats with some leather inserts, and the way they put the leather inserts here is that if somebody is sitting on it, all the exposed areas of the seats would be in leather, while the silhouette of the person sitting on it would be in fabric. So that is a practical and cool thing, because when somebody's sitting on the seats, it would look like you have actual leather seats, but in reality they're a mix of fabric and leather, and at the same time your passengers will have a cooler back and a cooler bum. So how cool is that, right? And the seats are nicely designed. They got this nice orange stitching and all, so it's sporty without being too uncomfortable. Now from your seats, you also have this nice leather wrap steering wheel with beautiful stitching. So this is a pleasant surprise that could be found at this price point, because most other offerings would normally come with a urethane wheel. Now, I like the design of the steering wheel itself as well. It looks really sporty, and the stitching is also gorgeous. Now, the quirky thing about the steering wheel though is the buttons that you have here are kind of inverted. The infotainment buttons are inverted, especially for the volume controls and the skip track control as well. But it's good to note though that you also have a cruise control system here in the Tiggo 280. That is another luxury that can be found in this budget crossover price segment. Now from your steering wheel, you also have your analog instrument gauges here. That is in a fun and quirky design that's similar to the larger Tiggo 7, which I kind of like this analog gauge design here. But since this is also a budget crossover, your infotainment display in the middle of the gauges is a little bit smaller, and it's not colored like the ones found in the Tiggo 7. From your instrument gauges, you move on to your infotainment system, and this Tiggo 2 has an 8-inch touchscreen LED system that has Bluetooth connectivity and even phone mirroring. Now, those are luxuries that really aren't present at this price point. Now, on top of that, you also get a rear view camera as well, which is another luxury, and well, it's a decent colored LED screen. Now from here, you also have your manual climate control buttons, and you also have your single USB port here, and a 12-volt power outlet as well. Now your shifter is in a urethane finish with a black plastic insert. It looks okay, it's not really that bad, but the thing is, it's a little quirky for a shifter. You see, this 4-speed automatic transmission is a gated shifter, but it doesn't really have any gates. It just has these small guidelines here at the side of the shifter that should instruct you that you have to put it into the gates if you want to get out of park or go into reverse or even driver neutral. There's no retaining buttons that can be found on the shifter. it would throw off any first-time Tiggo 2 drivers, because it did throw me off at least on the first 5 minutes since I got this car. So that's one quirky touch. Now, since this is a budget crossover offering, don't expect any electronic parking brake or brake hold whatsoever and whatnot. You only get this manual handbrake here, and you don't even have a center console with an armrest because, well, you just get a small center cubby here and a couple of cup holders that are kind of tiny for, well, now most cup holders nowadays. It's really on the small side. Now, when it comes to your dash materials, your cabin materials, since this is a budget crossover, you could expect to see a lot of hard plastics. But you gotta give credit to Chery Auto for trying to liven up the cabin a little bit more, because they threw in a little bit more texture and features in the cabin materials. Your dashboard gets this faux carbon fiber design look to it that breaks off that black monotony that's found in most of these budget cabins. You also have this aluminum inserts here on your door panels, which serves to liven up your cabin materials even more. So yeah, despite having a lot of hard plastics here and there, you still get some design textures and cues that should help liven up your daily commute. Now let's head over to the back seat and see what kind of space and features your passengers would enjoy in the Tiggo 2. Now, when you get to the back seat, it's gonna be understandably tight here. It's still decent though for a couple of passengers, and you could fit a third one in a pinch, but you'll feel the pinch if ever you do that. Now, you see the driver's seat is adjusted to somebody of my height. I'm 5'6". As you could see with the driver's seat adjustment here, I got a good amount of knee room here and a decent amount of leg room as well. If your driver is gonna be taller than me, well, tough luck on you. It's gonna be a bit of a tight squeeze here at the back. Now, when it comes to toys, you don't really get any toys here in the Tiggo 280's back seat. You don't have rear AC vents, you don't have a charging port, you don't even have an armrest here in the middle, and you don't get a dome light as well. So basically, the back seat is just for sitting, so there's that. Anyway guys, let's now take this Tiggo 2 out for a drive just to see how it performs on the road. Alright guys, so we're now behind the wheel of the Chery Tiggo 280, and as you can see, it is raining cats and dogs here. It's typhoon weather today. So during these times, you'd be really glad to be behind the wheel of something like a Chery Tiggo 280 rather than taking public transport or even riding a motorbike. You know, you'd really feel sorry for yourself. So anyway, since the Tiggo 280 is meant to be a daily commuter, let's check out some of its features and driving performance that would matter the most to people who would use this as their daily driver. First up, visibility. Well, despite being a small city crossover, you got a decent amount of visibility up front and on the sides, and it should give you a good view of the road. So even if this is a little bit on the shorter side or smaller side, well, the Tiggo 2 should not be a problem when it comes to overall visibility. Now, the Tiggo 2 also has some decent seats, and the seats are quite comfortable and supportive. They're not as plush as the ones found in the other higher Tiggo models, but they're decent enough for your daily commute. Now, when it comes to your air conditioning is quite cold. And especially in weather like this, where you just have to keep it at the minimum setting, and you're actually good to go. But I've driven this also on a hot sunny day, and well, it acquits itself perfectly well when it comes to the air conditioning department. All your switch gear, your buttons are all within reach. So because of that, the Tiggo 2 is quite easy to drive and maneuver around town. Now, the Tiggo 2 comes with an Eco mode and a Sport mode, and if you want to change between those two modes, you can find the button right here to the left side of your steering wheel. Now, it doesn't really have a go-between. It doesn't have a normal mode in between the Eco and Sport mode. But if I were you guys, if you're driving the Tiggo 2, keep it at Sport mode at all times, because its Sport mode is pretty much the normal mode of other crossovers. The Eco mode is quite usable, but given the fact that this is already down on power, well, I would rather use the Eco mode only when you're about to run out of fuel, and that's the only time I'd use that. So right now I'm in Sport mode, and it's quite decent in Sport mode. The 4-speed automatic transmission that the Tiggo 2 has, well, it's got a good amount of low-end torque, and that's very helpful when you're puttering around town like this in your Tiggo 2. Now, don't expect it to accelerate like a sports car, because it's not like that. It has a decent amount of power, and it could get you up to speed, well, eventually. If you were to ask me like how fast it would take to go from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour, well, my answer is yes. It can, eventually. Okay. But yeah, the tuning of the 4-speed automatic transmission, well, it doesn't really appreciate if you mash the gas pedal when you want to hurry up. If it does that, the engine will just whine and it won't really translate into, well, into actual vehicle speed. Rather, it appreciates a more linear input of the throttle so that it will slowly build up speed until it gets you there to that speed level that you want to go, eventually. Now, you'd be happy to note though that I also drove this around the steep roads of New Manila, and I didn't even have to put it on low gear to negotiate those steep roads and inclines. And I did have to put it on low gear, however, when I had to negotiate my notoriously steep parking ramp in my condominium complex. But it was able to climb up that parking ramp quite easily. It wasn't an issue at all for the Tiggo 2. Now, steering feel is also quite decent. It's not over boosted. It's not also that heavy. So it gives you the right amount of feedback, at least for a small city crossover. When it comes to braking feel, of course, since this thing has 4-wheel disc brakes, braking feel is confident, and you know that you could stop perfectly well on a dime. Now, one thing that I did notice about the Tiggo 2 in the weekend that I've been driving it is how good the NVH levels are. I mean, especially for a budget crossover at this price point. I mean, I didn't really expect it, but right now driving around the streets and yesterday I drove around some really busy roads and all that, the noise levels outside didn't really enter into the cabin that much. You're quite well insulated here inside your Tiggo 2, which is something that's a bit of a surprise for me, especially being a budget crossover. The NVH levels of the Tiggo 2 is practically like some of the pricier crossovers that are closer to the ₱1,000,000 mark or even higher. So yeah, that fantastic level of NVH contributes to the overall comfort of this Tiggo 2, and especially if you're going to use it as a daily commuter. Now, its suspension is also quite composed. It's tuned more for comfort rather than performance, which is totally expected, especially for a budget crossover. It does absorb the potholes quite well. I went through some nasty roads and potholes yesterday, and it really did its job quite good. So it's not really something that you'd expect, especially, well, at this price point. I keep saying that because I'm really quite surprised how this Tiggo 2 has given us so much features and has given us this kind of cabin comfort at its price point. I mean, my goodness, 700,000 Philippine pesos, and you're already getting this kind of comfort and amenities. Wow. I especially like the fact that even if you touch the panels inside and the door panels, you don't hear any creaks. And whenever you're driving the car, you don't also feel or hear any rattles at all in the underside. So it speaks a lot about the level of engineering that went into this Tiggo 2. I mean, despite being the cheapest and smallest budget crossover in the lineup, Chery Auto also didn't scrimp, at least in the build quality and engineering of this thing. I mean, quality of materials notwithstanding, the fit and finish is quite decent. Now, if there's one niggle that I'll have to tell you guys, that would be the fuel economy. Now, this Tiggo 2, despite being the smallest crossover in Chery's lineup, doesn't really have a stellar fuel economy. In city driving, it could only do around 8 kilometers per liter, at least in the weekend that I've had it. And in the highway driving, you're looking at somewhere around 14 to 15 kilometers per liter. Granted, the whole time I was driving this thing, I was always on sport mode. I mean, I never even wanted to do eco mode at all, guys. So maybe that contributed to that low fuel economy. I mean, it's not really low. It's decent, but it's not really class leading, guys. But yeah, if you keep it at sport mode, expect around 8 kilometers per liter in the city and around 15 kilometers per liter in the highway. Eco mode should probably give you a little bit better figures, but well, where's the fun in that, right? Overall, guys, the Chery Tiggo 280 is a well-sorted city commuter that ticks all the right boxes when it comes to being a daily driver. Its drive performance is decent, nothing extraordinary, just plain and practical, but it's also quite expected, especially at this budget and its price point. But given the fact that you get above average cabin comfort and some tech features and amenities that aren't really found in this price category, well, I must say that this Chery Tiggo 280 is an outstanding value when it comes to these budget city crossovers. It's nearly impossible to look for a basic car at this price point that can offer you the same space, tech, and creature comforts that can be found in the Chery Tiggo 280. The fact that Chery Philippines even throws in a free 3-year preventive maintenance service package, a 5-year general vehicle warranty, and a 10-year or 1 million kilometer engine warranty totally demolishes its competition. It's got the space, the tech, and the creature comforts that's normally found in more expensive crossovers. So for a basic car that will take you from point A to B, you can get a better value or style than the Chery Tiggo 280. Once again, guys, thank you for watching one of my car reviews. If you like this review, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well. I promise you guys, I'll make it worth your while if you subscribe to Reagan's Rides. I'm Reagan, and I'll see you again in my next video. Bye-bye.